Today we're going to talk about red pill, manosphere, and love advice for men in particular. How's that for a setup? There's a lot of things I want to talk about with you, but first, I just want to let you know, guys, this is Mike Mazza. He's a associate fellow or fellow? Associate fellow at the Ayn Rand Institute, where you teach at the Ayn Rand University. Mm-hmm. Dr. Mazza received his PhD in philosophy from St. Louis University. His research is focused on the philosophy of science, on the philosophy of science, especially the metaphysics of causation. And now we're going to talk about the causation of love, maybe. But you wrote an article recently titled "The Manosphere's Poison Pill," mm-hmm. which I've been interested in this for a long time. I'm single. I don't want to be single. I've, not been single in the past, but there's, so I'm interested in this, advice that you get out there mm-hmm. in the world for young men. I'm not even that young anymore. I'm 39, just men in general.
There's a big middle-aged audience in the manosphere. So.
Yeah, it's growing because we're getting older. We're still not getting married. So.
Oh, you're out of the dating sphere for 10, 15 years if you're married, and then you're divorced and you get back in.
So I wanted to get started before we talked about the article specifically, but you and how you got involved and interested in this subject. Mm-hmm. I mean, philosophy of science, metaphysics of causation, manosphere.
Yeah. Well, like a lot of young intellectual types, I got interested in just what kind of dating advice I could get online on the internet. Now, this is 15, 20 years ago, I guess. But that's how I first got introduced to it. And this is a time before there were things like red pill, and we'll talk about the evolutionary psychology influence on these people. It was basically a conglomeration of fitness advice, fashion advice, lifestyle advice, and then the kind of pickup artist type things. So I read the book The Game, which was
Neil Strauss.
It was
like 2005.
Yeah, for people who don't know, I guess used to be. I think it's died down a little bit. I assume there's still some version of it around. These guys would go out to clubs and bars on the weekends, and they had a whole system of how to be social in such a way that would get you a woman's number or get her to come home with you. And they were, selling seminars that you could go and they would coach you and things like that. And a journalist wrote a book about these people called The Game. And what was interesting about The Game was that the journalist started out as just this kind of, how you would picture a journalist, kind of nebbish, introspective, shy kind of person who then not only is following these guys around, but learning their skills and eventually becomes one of them. So that's why the book was kind of interesting. So that was what I knew about it back, 15, 20 years ago. And I got a little bit out of it.
You got something out of it.
I got a little,
as a man.
Yeah.
Not just an intellectual.
Not just an intellectual. The kind of basic things that as I say in the article, if you've never heard, that, hey, if, you work on your appearance a little bit, that'll help your dating life. And it's really, once you hear somebody say that, and then once you do something and see success, it becomes of course, this was obvious the whole time. Yeah. But if you're, teenager, early 20s, mid 20s, and just, you just don't know what you don't know. So that kind of thing I got out of it, but none of the stuff that you'd identify with manosphere ever kind of grabbed me. None of the pickups that seemed silly to me.
Oh, okay.
I'm not trying, my goal in learning this stuff is not to be able to go to a club and go home with somebody. I would just wanted to find a girlfriend or, that kind of thing.
Even in your 20s?
Even in my early 20s.
So you had a healthier perspective than some, I think.
Yeah. I'm in college and the whole kind of thing, I'm going to go read scripts to women at college, but there was no, even if I wanted to, there's no nightclub scene. You're going to parties and right. So, and then at parties, everybody's at a normal nightclub for adults, not everybody there is smashed, right?
This is true.
But at a college party, at least half the attendees are just drunk, right? So none of it jibed with anything I wanted to do or even really could do. And then, once some of the other parts of this movement sprung up years later, so that now they're having opinions on not just here's how to meet girls, but now it's like, here's why dating is so hard these days. They start to comment on the sociology of American dating, and they have views about it. Then they start getting attention for that. And, I read some things. Oh, why do they think that, men have it bad these days? And, it was
men's rights activists.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But also, here's the problem. Here's how feminism is ruining everything, and that kind of stuff. So, a lot of what they say is right, but
you always see that with the other side too, where some of their criticism.
Yeah, here's the stupid things men are doing that's ruining everything, and it's like, some of that's right.
That's right. Yeah. And so the question is always like, how do you navigate to get to the truth and really guide your life in a meaningful way? And that's what your article's kind of hitting on.
Now, for the article, I went back to look at some of the things I'd been, following casually way back when, and most of that stuff was defunct, but there was one that was like a news aggregator for all of this stuff. I don't want to, it hasn't been updated in 3 years, and what's on there. So I just was curious, like, what are they talking about now?
Okay. This isn't Reddit?
No, this is just a website.
Okay, that was aggregating for the red pill stuff?
Viva la manosphere is what it was.
Okay.
And it was like the Drudge Report, how...
For the manosphere.
For the manosphere, right. So when
I didn't even know about it.
The last time I had seen this website, it was literally just an aggregator. So it was like, half of it was just like fitness blogs, and the rest of it was like lifestyle and fashion. And then there'd be the weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
And now I went back to it to look at it recently, and the last time it was updated, like I said, was 3 years ago. But everything that's up there is like all these stories about women behaving badly. Like that's what they had to say.
It seems to be a dominant trend.
This crazy person did this in England, and this crazy woman did that in California, and took the kids, and then like stole all the guy's money, and like that's all that was up there was these stories. And then there'd be like a little in the corner like, here's how to lose 10 pounds in a month, that kind of thing. But it was clear that the vibe had shifted to bitching about women versus some sort of semblance of self-improvement.
Yeah. And I got into this stuff very casually. I wouldn't say that I, became a pickup artist or anything, but I started listening to this podcast a long time ago called The Art of Charm. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of them? The Jordan Harbinger?
What I remember is Mystery Method and the guy who named himself after Fight Club. Somebody called himself Tyler Durden.
Oh, yeah, I know there's Mystery from the game book. Yeah. No, so The Art of Charm was a bunch of, like, Jordan Harbinger was a young law student, lawyer in New York, and him and his friends got into the pickup game with the Neil Strauss and all those guys in New York City scene. And in their youth, in their 20s, they were really into this, and it was really successful. But then as time went on, so when I started listening to it was 10 years in, when it did become just a self-help book. So this is actually where I got introduced to Ryan Holiday, and he had a book called The Obstacle is the Way, which was, so I got into it like after a big breakup. I was, heartbroken and sad and miserable. And so I was like, I got to get out of this mess, and I got to get back out there. So The Art of Charm had all this advice on how to, The Obstacle is the Way is the first one I listened to, which was about, these things that happen in your life, or that's actually helpful guide to getting to what you ultimately want, blah, blah. And so,
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You said this was 10-ish years.
Yeah, I think so.
And so what you're describing so far seems, completely normal self-help to me.
Yes.
And I noticed a sort of pattern. The people that, if you read the game and you like Google where these people are now, there's kind of two categories. There's what seems to have been young guys who really just wanted to get better at being able to meet women, who kind of got carried away, so to speak. And then they're just normal people. They're gone. They're off to something else. Like the guy that wrote that book, Double Your Dating, was one of
Eben Pagan.
He was going by David D'Angelo at the time.
I have his little piece.
Yeah, I had that book, in 2005 or whatever. And now he's just a marketing guy, right?
Yeah, that's the Eben Pagan.
He's changed his name or whatever.
Yeah,
and I would wager that he has a healthy really, I don't know this, but I would wager that he has a healthy relationship, or maybe if he's between, he has a healthy attitude now, versus somebody like, if you read the game Mystery, who is, it's like institutionalized at some point, like suicidal.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in the
Not
book.
surprising.
It's in the book.
Oh, that's okay.
Right.
I haven't read it since like 2006
Yeah.
or something.
Or the last I heard about Neil Strauss, he like gave that all up and like got married, and he like kind of like there was an interesting article in maybe one of those, the New York Times magazine or New Yorker or something like that, about him giving this up and getting married. Now I don't know if that stuck or what the latest is. Yeah.
Well, I know Jordan Harbinger was married and has a kid. I don't know over the last several years what's happened to him. Mm-hmm. Last I checked, that's what was going on with him. But yeah, I mean, he had, when I was listening to him, again, this was 10 years after he had done the pickup stuff, like, and they actually taught pickup. Mm-hmm. That's how Art of Charm started. It was something else. And then it evolved from, you also did with Nikos a show, a YouTube on New Ideal on manosphere, tonic or poison. Mm-hmm. So it was before the article where you were kind of exploring this, I think, at the beginning. And you mentioned, or Nikos mentioned, the outer and the inner game. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what happened with this guy, Jordan Harbinger. Is he, when he was younger, him and his friends were focused on the outer game. That's like, I mean, it is the sleazy stuff you hear about in a sense. It's kind of manipulative. It can be. Mm-hmm. It can be like negging is the popular one everyone knows about, where you kind of neg a woman on some of her, subtly on some of her flaws, which is supposedly supposed to get her to want to prove herself to you by sleeping with you or something. That's the dream that they had back then. But what that often leads to, if you're the better sort, is the inner game, where it's about building a character. Mm-hmm. So the kind of things that Jordan Harbinger and the Art of Charm guys, mostly it was just Jordan Harbinger's show, they would have guys like, there's this Read to Lead podcast. It was about how to be a better reader. And it was, like I said, the Ryan Holidays. I even got Alex Epstein. When I was working for Alex Epstein at the Center for Industrial Progress, he had just published his book, The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. And my job is to kind of help get him marketing, things like that. So I liked this podcast. I was like, I wonder if I can get them together. And they talked about how to think about things. Yeah. That was the podcast. And this was like a podcast at the time that got 3 million downloads and stuff. So, but it moved into this inner game, like this becoming a better man is the best way to attract and achieve the things you want, including a woman.
Well, so there's, if you want to help somebody who's, young, trouble with dating, doesn't know how to meet women, there's not going to be like one thing wrong with everybody. There's one problem everybody faces. So a lot of people, it's just like social anxiety. You're just shy. You don't go out and you meet people. So if you learn some of these things you're talking about, if you like really try to do it, what do you do? Well, you'll actually go out in a public place and you'll talk to strangers.
Yes.
And just doing that, regardless of what anybody's, magic cure is or, advice is, just going out and talk, I can talk to somebody and they're not going to like embarrass me or like bite my head off or something. I mean, that's a kind of revelation to a lot of people. And then that you yourself are capable of doing that. Like, so I sold vacuum cleaners door to door.
Yeah.
And
where was it? Kirby
vacuums, yeah.
I always stayed away from them.
And I was after I did that for a few weeks in one summer. It was my summer job for a while, 1 year in college. I was way less socially anxious just because I realized you could like literally talk to strangers about anything, and most people are friendly. I mean, the worst you'll get is somebody doesn't want to talk to you and they'll like brush you off.
Yeah.
So doing that kind of stuff is going to help a lot of people, even if the advice is actually bad. So here's this script you memorize, go say this to some girls at bars or whatever. I mean, yeah, that's not the healthiest way to think about meeting somebody for a romantic.
Not for real.
Yeah, for real. But if you do that, if you go and do that, you will find yourself just like if what's the best way to give a public speech? Well, if you ask people who are really good at it, it's, there's pre-planning, but it's pretty extemporaneous. Like the best ones are like that.
But it's not just reading books about it?
No, it's not just reading books about it.
You have to go out and actually do it.
When you start, maybe the best thing is to have a teleprompter and literally have it all written out.
Well, so
or have cards and then you get used to it, and now you're comfortable on the stage.
Toastmasters.
Yeah, you can, whatever it is.
Well, but
So,
the script,
but the point I'm making is that
yeah.
the people who, like, if that's really the only reason you're having trouble meeting a girl is that you're just too shy and socially anxious. Once you get over that, and then you'll meet somebody, and it'll be like, what do I need all this other stuff for? Like, I meet women the same way that all my healthy friends meet them. Like, you go to a party, oh, she's cute. Do you know her? Yeah, that's so and so's friend, and you go talk to them. Like, now you can do that too, and
Yeah. Okay. So I agree with that. So there's two things I want to say about that, I guess, in terms of actual advice, since we're now in the advice realm. Is like, in my experience, one, I agree with the scripting thing to get started, even though it's really weird. And I understand, especially to women I've talked to, it's like the weirdest thing possible. And I get it. But I sold knives for 4 years.
Yeah, and
I
you have
sold
a script.
Kutka.
Yeah.
And at first I had a script, and I literally was like with my grandmother,
Yeah.
like shaking and reading this script. But then once I got through it, and I did it several times, I developed my own style.
Yes, I'm not recommending this. I didn't mean to recommend the script. I'm just pointing out that if you do that, you'll get over your social
I am recommending
anxiety.
the script.
You're recommending.
Yeah,
it.
because
I'm not taking any so
because
I don't know what the best way to get over social anxiety
sorry,
is.
you're right. That's
Is it to use
whatever
a script?
you might need.
Yeah, right.
For me, I did at first need the script.
Well, that's how I did Kirby.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
The first house I went up to, I literally had a piece of paper that I read to some lady, and she took pity on me and let me in, and then I sold the vacuum because the way it works is
that's how it works.
Yeah, you show the vacuum, and then you call your manager, and he shows up, and he's
then he does
he's
the
the slick salesman, and,
okay.
and he makes the sale. So we sold the first house I knocked the door on. That's a huge confidence boost. She could have just slammed the door in my face.
She should have.
Probably should have. I mean, I would have.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so first off, what I'm just saying about the scripting thing is just, for me, it was helpful because I actually, like, people think, I'm in sales. People look at me and they're like, oh, you're really, outgoing and social and things, which is actually not true. I was not raised that way. I was a very, but I did what you did, but I did it for longer because I'm slow learner.
I just did it for a few weeks.
I did it for 4 years, but I'm a slow learner. So it took me some time. No, I'm just kidding. But the point is that there was some value in the scaffolding that, for me, everyone's going to be a little bit different. They might be better socially. They don't need these things. But the other thing I do think is interesting is, like, once you learn that, you can actually regress. Like, so there's a value in getting back into and having some kind of scaffolding to help you get into it again. So, and kind of thinking about it again, because I just going through COVID, for instance, I noticed a huge regression in my social abilities. And I just was I was more shy again. I had reverted to this. Because I was in a house by myself for 9 months, literally. And so my point is that these types of skills are something that you have to develop, you have to work on for your whole entire life, and value them as skills in and of themselves.
Well, I think
the social, not just talking to girls,
right.
but just
if we are just thinking about dating and meeting women, I mean, so a lot of young guys who read this stuff, I think, based on their self-reports, a lot of them, it's not like, oh, this is hard for me, I need advice. It's like, I'm 25 and I've never been on a date. I've never had any positive response from a woman. So yeah, sure, there can be regression in that you're more or less social and things like that. But just discovering that somebody might actually be interested in you can be like a keystone moment or something in your development. So there's, of course, for any skill, you can regress if you don't practice, if you don't exercise it. But I think what's really valuable, or can be really valuable, about some of this advice is that if somebody can get you your first positive reaction, a coach, a piece of advice, a book, whatever, then that thing is going to really cement itself in your mind as this person or this set of ideas. There's something special about this. They have the deep insight
I listened
into
to Art of
things.
Charm for like 2 years after that, religiously, like a lot. I listened to it all.
And
the time.
it can be hard to either realize, first person, realize that, well, there's nothing special about what they're teaching. It's just that I needed somebody to kind of provide external motivation for me to take any kind of action. so it can be hard to realize that, but then can be also hard to convince somebody. Like if you're like, look, this is what I say in the article. There's certain things you'll find on red pill websites that are actually good advice. They have nothing to do with anything uniquely red pill. Like
it's just good human advice.
It's good human advice. Like some older brother or coach or somebody could give you this advice too if you went to them and hey, I need some help. And that's the reason people don't do that is there's a kind of embarrassment guys have about this stuff. So that's why it's all like underground, secret, and everybody has a pseudonym, or at least used to have a pseudonym, because it's like there's shame around asking for this kind of advice. But it's nothing in principle. Which is
bizarre.
I mean, there's nothing in principle, red pill or mystery method or any of these things about let's go out and practice talking to people. Like anybody could help you do that, and there's no method to it.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is that there are these valuable skills. That's how they kind of hook you in a sense. Mm. And then of course trying to keep you around, what are they advocating in that realm? And I don't think it's just red pill. I think religion does the same, like Christianity does this. Again, this was another breakup. I think all the things in my life with development happen around breakups, but this is many, many years ago, another breakup. And I almost got sucked into, what's L. Ron Hubbard? Scientology. I almost got not really sucked into it, but like I got duped into going to their office. I had no idea. Because
you didn't know what they were.
I didn't know what they were, but at first the advice they were giving was actually good. I think good. Like what happened was I was at this mixer. I met this very attractive young lady. It's always how it is. And then she seemed very interested in me and she was flirting. I was like, is she flirting?
Come down to my...
And then she's like, oh yeah, I'm a psychology major. Can you take this? Would you be willing to take this test? Yeah. And I took the test and I was like, this is actually kind of interesting. Yeah. And then of course at the back of my head, I was like, well, let me try and get this one.
I took one of them as a goof years ago. They used to be in the subways in New York. They would just stand there, and there's an attractive woman, a young woman, an attractive guy, and they profile you pretty well, and they'd come up to you and say, hey, we want to take this test.
Yeah.
So me and some of my friends were like, let's just, because we knew what it was. They had a big Dianetics. I didn't know what it was. They had a big Dianetics sign, and we know what that was.
This was just at a mix.
But it was, you hold these cans, but then it's like, do you get stressed about school sometimes? And and then the needle's going crazy, and like, oh, you need all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But no, there was
That's interesting. I didn't do that.
But all kind of movements do this stuff, good movements and bad movements.
Exactly. So that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. So there's a prominent objectivist once spoke at a conference that was billed to them as like a self-helpy type conference. It was really I think this was before Red Pill, but it was a manosphere type thing. Yeah. So they went and they gave... I know who this is. Yeah, they gave us, he was telling me the other day, there was some really good talks on like health and nutrition and personal finance. And I gave something about, happiness and building a purpose or whatever it was. And then the dating guys came up and, the people who were there under not exactly false pretenses, but didn't really realize what they were getting at were like, what is this other stuff that these other lectures are about? So so there's a kind of rope-a-dope, you kind of, here, I'll help you get in shape. I'll teach you about lifestyle and how to make more money. And here's my dating advice too. And then if you aren't, especially if you're a little desperate or you don't know a lot about life, you can see it all as going together. So, this guy gave me some good fitness and financial advice. Let me see what he says about women. And you can see that as all being one package, and it's not.
Yeah, so let's get into the article, the red pill aspect of it that is the negative. So there's, they start.
It's not the only negative.
Sorry, that there are negatives. Yeah. Like there's a poison to it. There's something that's actually detrimental to your love life, detrimental to your happiness, detrimental to your short, medium, and long-term flourishing, and even if there's something positive that you get, so even if you lost 20 pounds, you might also get this horrible incel manifesto type, hatred of women or envy of certain kinds of men who get women or things like that, that is coupled with it. That's really dangerous. And I'm seeing it move into, I'd like to talk about, like, to me, it seems like it's moving it even into movements like Tradcon stuff and what I told you before the show, the pronatalism move. Like, it seems like that is, it's moving into that. So, but before we get into that, let's talk about the kind of negatives.
I can't imagine the pronatalists having a positive reaction to red pill. Like, as I say in the article, so the way you describe the pronatalist to me is it's very techie types, people in the sciences and genetics, that they would look at what the red pill is doing with evopsych and have anything other than a disgust reaction is implausible to me.
So the pronatalism one is difficult because I think it's really new. Mm-hmm. Two, I don't know that there's a lot of intellectual defense or like the only defenses I've heard are the population is decreasing intensely.
This maybe what's the pronatalism movement again for people who aren't familiar?
So pronatalism is, I think Elon Musk is a big proponent. Janice and something Collins, mm-hmm. I think that's their names. There's a few of these people, and they're pro, and they're it's more. I think it's more than just pro having babies. It's pro having babies because the world's going to end because population is going down. I mean, that's the kind of
and isn't it pro smart people, productive people having babies?
Yeah, I don't know that they're saying like, oh, look, there's a lot of people in sub-Saharan Africa or the poorest parts of America that they're having babies. Good. Yeah. It's more like, we need the elites to have more babies. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's like Elon Musk which, he
has a lot of kids.
He has a lot of kids. Yeah. And, good for him. He's got billions. He could have, a babysitter and a tutor for each one of them. Yeah. So, I don't see. But, to me, I'm very pro kids. I'd like to have kids. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the argument of the world's going to end, mm-hmm. Or like there's going to be a lot of deleterious effects of the downward trend of population in the world, and particularly the West. And they do talk about Western values for sure. They say, we need to have lots of kids so we can put our values into them too. I mean, that stuff is the negative. Like, I don't see that as a positive reason to have a kid.
But to connect it to, I could see some sort of connection to manosphere type things there. Why aren't more people procreating and that kind of question? I could see that as and if there being some tie-in with red pill. But like I was saying before, I don't really know much about the natalist, and it's not super plausible to me that they'd take anything like red pill serious. I mean,
well, let's get into what the red pill stuff is saying on the negative side. So in your article, you point out some things like the gender, the views of the opposite sex, and also determinism, free will, that are kind of built into it.
So like all of these terms we're throwing around, they sort of refer to ideas and they sort of refer to groups of people. So what is red pill? Can I define a doctrine that everybody who thinks of themselves as a red pill would, sign up on? Like you could if you were talking about like communists or something, like, mm-hmm. There's a set of principles that everybody who thinks of themselves as
a card.
So that's a literal part. That's a literal group of people. But I'm thinking of like, if you think of yourself as a Marxist, I mean, like there's a set of doctrine you'll agree with, or an objectivist, or a Christian or something. There's some like minimal philosophical commitment. So with these sort of groups, what you get is more like, sometimes it's called like family resemblance concepts. So there's like a list of like 10 things, and if you believe in 6 of them, then you're red pill. But not 2 people don't have to believe.
I didn't know that.
Well, that's not what they're saying. This is my characterization of it.
So there's like it is like an ideology.
Yeah, there are ideas, but it's not like a set of doctrine that you have to agree with all of them. That's not how I think about it. So now some of them might think about it a different way, like if they're thinking about themselves as a group or a movement, but that doesn't, just because red pillars aren't automatically right about red pill any more than Marxists are automatically right about what Marxist doctrine is. You have to, you can have a view
disagreement about what red pill is.
No, like you can have a disagreement about whether a certain doctrine is essential to the ideology.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, there's not like a prescribed.
Yeah, it's not like the definition of red pill is not what red pillers say red pill is, right?
I see. Well, and so red pill just so I mean
They're going to be more informed about it. Presumably, they're going to know
Yeah.
themselves better, like as just a matter of like who's going to be most informed about what's going on in Marxism. Probably a Marxist, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't like dismiss their own self-categorization, but it's also not infallibly true.
Well, and just so people, I'm pretty sure everyone watching this is familiar with red pill on some
Right,
level,
so
but
we should-
red pill is the reference to the Matrix where you get a blue pill, red pill. And if you take the blue pill, you get to stay in the fake society and
Yeah.
the world that's built up by the powers to be or whatever. If you take the red pill, you go down the rabbit hole and you get the truth of what reality is really like.
Right.
And that, to me, that reality view is really interesting. And I was talking to a friend about, I was going to have and talk to you about this. And he was telling me about Rollo Tomasi. And my friend's argument, and I had heard about Rollo Tomasi, but I had never really read the book, The Rational Male, or any of this stuff. And, but the things he was saying to me was just like red flags were going off in my head. Yeah. Like one of the arguments he was saying is Rollo Tomasi is saying that he doesn't have ideology. This is just the facts. And I was like, well, as someone who's trained in objectivist, it's like, well, that's not really possible. Like there's going to be a philosophy. He may pretend like there's not, or advocate like this is just the facts, the straight facts. But his facts, like, I think are going to have an ideological base to them. Well, do you think that's right about Rollo Tomasi?
But so the kind of, so this is somebody else speaking about another person, right? So it's your friend.
Yeah. Well, who's like obsessed with, who reads a lot of it.
So you think it's going to be an accurate.
Yeah. So like he's read a lot of it. Like he's very,
well, but
he listens to the podcast.
So one of the, let's give a concrete claim of these red pill type people. So there's this, I don't know how, do you mind if I swear?
Yeah, I don't care.
So they have this view that they call alpha fucks beta bucks, right? You put an X at the end of it to make it like rhyme or something. I don't know, or to spell it that way so it doesn't get flagged by YouTube.
Good advertising.
Yeah. So the idea is that women like a certain type of men, alpha, for sex, and they pair up with another type of men, the betas, for money and resources. And this is kind of like really the sexual pool is towards the alpha type guy, but the pull towards the beta type guy is more like transactional, reproductive, like, oh, she needs somebody to take care of the offspring that actually the alpha is going to, sire, and the beta is going to be the cuckold. That is not a reporting of facts. That is a theoretical processing of alleged facts about. So women tend to be attracted, if you do a study of who women are prone to sleep with, like looking for their revealed preferences, not their stated preferences. And if you found that, there's a certain type of archetypical guy who's really aggressive, has lots of masculine features, and et cetera, and women really want to sleep with that guy, but they don't want to have a long-term relationship. If that were the fact, that would be a fact if you discovered that. And there's another type of guy who's got more androgynous characteristics, less aggressive, but very, productive and caring, and et cetera. That's the sort of person that women tend to marry. And then if you found additionally that like half of children are actually not the children of the father they think that is the father, like if you found if that kind of stuff was true just empirically, the whole theory of psychology that women are attracted to would explain that. So is it a reporting of facts? No, it's a theory it's a theory to explain alleged facts.
Yes.
And those alleged facts aren't actually true either. So it's not true that he's just explaining, he's just reporting facts.
Well, they're not true in the sense that every woman has to do that. It's true that some women do that.
Yeah.
So there are some women who cheat on their husbands with a more masculine man.
Well, we can get into what's actually true in a second. I'm just making the point that if those statistical patterns were true, were facts,
sure,
your alpha beta doctrine would not be an additional fact. It would be a postulate to explain this. And then you could say, you might have another explanation that has nothing to do with alphas and betas or any kind of social hierarchy or something. It might just be that, yeah, women are more aroused by hyper masculine behaviors and traits. And does that mean you're not a good provider? No. I mean, some people can be both, and some people could be a poor provider and a criminal and also, also have androgynous or effeminate features. And so you could give a different accounting of this that doesn't have to do with any kind of, the alpha beta idea is sort of a view of where someone stands on social hierarchy within a social hierarchy, and sort of a view on genetic fitness. It's kind of both and neither. So anyway, but it doesn't. Yeah. It does. The point is not to go into the details of this. Is just there are the facts, and then there are the theoretical explanations for the facts, and the kind of thing that come out of red pill are the alpha beta thing, hypergamy or hypergamy. I hear both.
I always heard hypergamy.
I hear hypergamy. Yeah, I've heard hypergamy too, but doesn't sound right yet.
And hypergamy, just so we're clear, is when a woman chooses a guy
sleeps upwards
in terms of social hierarchy and genetics and money.
Yeah, but I think like if you would think about it to tie it into the alpha beta thing, like if she's cheating on her husband with some alpha guy, she'd be prone to cheat on him with another more alpha guy. And if the husband's a good provider, but not, up to her standards, she'll look for the better provider at some point.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of upward climb that's an innate part of women's sexuality that they're postulating. Again, that's it's like any theory. If the theory is true, then yeah, it's in a way a fact.
Sure.
But like if you're talking about it, he doesn't have an ideology. He has.
Well, he says that. Yeah. Rollo Tomassi says that about.
I don't have an ideology. No, you have a whole theory of psychology, and like that's okay, what's informed. That's not an ideology in the sense of it's not a political agenda for social change. That's what ideology is. But it's not. I'm just reporting. I'm just stating facts. You have a theory to explain certain alleged facts that you're pushing.
Yeah.
And even scientific theories can have social political implications.
Yeah.
So, but
that's what's rolled up in all of these red pill ideas.
You can disentangle them. You could say like,
try to get the good stuff.
Yeah, or you could just say, look, of course, every scientific theory has social political or not every, but many, especially scientific theories of human behavior, have social political implications. I'm just not concerned with them. I'm just doing the science. This is the science. You other people figure this out. Figure out the ideology. I mean, somebody could say that, and in that sense, like.
But he's giving actual advice, though. Is the other
who?
Rollo Tomassi.
Oh,
yeah. So he's not. He's saying that this is the basis for the advice I'm giving.
Yeah,
you.
Right.
So the advice I'm giving you is, this isn't from him, but I'm taking this from your article.
Well, so the advice is not supposed to be from him. It's supposed to be from the Reddit forum on the red pill.
Yeah. So this is, just to be clear, this is not quoting
from
Rollo Tomassi, but it's red pill.
It's right. This is why I made the point that it's the idea of red pill is sort of sociological, sort of philosophical, theoretical, right? So
that's mixing a lot of things.
Right. So if you're into the red pill, not every red pill person is going to give the identical same advice, but the kind of the family resemblance is they're probably going to think in terms of alpha beta hierarchies. They're probably going to think of women in hypergamy type, as hypergamous. Yeah. So those are that's why I picked.
That's what universally is.
That's why I picked those two things, because as far as I've seen, all of the red pill.
Yeah, you're looking for the common denominator.
Yeah, all the people who self-identify as red pill talk in that kind of, either they literally use that exact language, alpha, beta, hypergamy, or they're not using that language, but it's the same ideas, right?
Well, I just have to say about that language, it's now made it, I think, mainstream. Yeah. I've heard just casual conversations talking to younger people, the alpha, beta, sigma type conversation. Yeah, it's like, alpha. That was a sigma move or something like that. I was like, what? What exactly is sigma? Like, that's a new one. Like, I've always known what an alpha is, of course. Like, we know what that goes back to anything, just the big dog, basically. The alpha, and the beta dog is the one that falls on his back and shows his belly type thing. Like, that's where it comes from, kind of as wolf.
Well, I would assume the most relevant comparison would be like gorillas or chimpanzees.
Or yeah. So
there's like
that's
the silverback is kind of like the leader has the most sexual access to the females in the group. And
now there does seem to be something true about this, though.
Well, there seems to be something true about that for primates generally.
Yeah.
But whether or not that applies to humans.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and how much it applies to I mean, we are animals and we are rational beings. So we have both elements.
Well,
part of that.
Human beings organize into hierarchies. Yeah. Hierarchies can be good. They're not, automatically good. Hereditary hierarchies are evil, but hierarchies of like, this guy's the boss because he's, he founded the company and he had the idea and he's like, or this person is more senior in the philosophy department because published more papers. He's got more influence. Yeah. I mean, sometimes he's been here longer, which usually isn't mean anything, but in some contexts matters. So yeah, there's different kind of hierarchy. You could think of like a family, like in this family, like dad's kind of the boss, and in this family, mom has the final say, and like that's a little bit of a hierarchy. The parents are above the kids. So there's all kind of respects in which there are hierarchies.
Yeah.
The quarterback in a football team is in some sense a little bit higher. There's a coach, so. So hierarchies are fine, and people organize into hierarchies for valid reasons all the time. Is that the same thing as the alpha beta theory? Well, it's not,
because it includes genetics, or like your masculine features and your higher genetics. That's what she's really interested in, versus what she's really interested in is competence.
Yes. So, I mean, the red pill alpha beta, and this is not an original criticism for me, it doesn't make sense in the following respect. Like, if you think of it as the alpha is the most genetically fit, I mean, what does genetically fit mean? It's most capable of surviving.
Yeah.
Who's more alpha? Some like
jacked bodybuilder?
No, I was saying like some, MMA fighters like Conor McGregor or something.
Oh, okay.
Or Elon Musk or Bill Gates, or, Bill Gates back when he was actually doing interesting things. Or Steve, like, would you think of like geeky Bill Gates as like an alpha type guy? Or, some guy with a job that will make him famous, but like he's really good at it and makes, a couple $100,000 a year. Like, who's more alpha, who's more beta? For human beings, productivity is the survival relevant trait. So whatever character traits that make you more productive, that's the actual thing. If you wanted to think this way, that's the alpha. But so,
well, you're saying like, so the memes that I see, because I lift weights,
the Chad memes,
it's like the memes where it's like this guy walking in, he's a bodybuilder, he's like walking into the gym knowing that I own this because I bench 315.
Yeah.
Like, so I actually own this company or something like that. And there's those kinds. So that's the Conor McGregor or the fight. Like, I'm a fighter. I'm a black belt. I could beat up everybody, but I barely can make $40,000 a year.
You have traditional masculine traits or something. So
yeah.
Or you have physiologically masculine traits. You're really fit. You have the strong jaw. Well, but
what this is kind of one of the arguments.
That's some of what they're drawn to. Part of it also is going to be levels of sexual aggression or just social aggression generally towards other people. So what's a beta? Which is more beta? Like which is more alpha? Like but would you like to go out on a date with me? Maybe. That's like beta, and the alpha is going to be like, let's go on a date. Like really assertive. So there's different. There's physiological traits, behavioral traits that they're going to think of as alpha and beta. And what I'm not saying is, oh, women don't like any of these traits or something. I'm just saying, like, this is how you're going to look at the facts about what women are attracted to, and you're going to think of it in terms of alpha and beta. There's a kind of internal incoherence to it, because if you're thinking about alpha as most genetically fit is like the intelligent, hyper-focused person who's highly productive.
Yeah.
And whether or not he has a Chad jaw, or, that if people know that meme of the
Yeah.
really sharply angled face. It's usually in black and white drawing.
Hey, I saw some memes on Instagram of all these ladies loving the Tony Soprano, and I was like, I look like that dude.
Tony's,
I was like, yes,
but
go
I mean,
Tony.
Tony's,
He doesn't have like
yeah.
its jaw, although you might have to wax some dudes once in a while.
Tony Soprano is super alpha in his behavior. If
Well,
you watch
exactly.
the show.
That's what I'm saying, but he doesn't have the Chad jaw.
He doesn't have the
sure.
Chad jaw. He's
He just makes up for it with
he's
whacking
basically
dudes.
obese. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
And that's part of the story is you can see him get bigger over the years, and like it's part of the character.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like it's that inconsistency. It's not just the Chad jaw. Obviously, it's not.
Yeah, and they're not saying it's just the Chad jaw. It's just like that.
That's just one aspect of it. Yeah. But the point is that there's a lot of that within the red pill community. There's a lot of that view that I think leads to other, like one of the things you mentioned in your article, What's in the Red Pill, is speak to women as though they are children because emotionally they are. And that's like one of the pieces of advice. Yeah,
that's less alpha beta stuff and more just about women's psychology.
Yeah, no,
like more just like directly about that. That's not a claim about how they are towards men or something. That's just romantically or otherwise, women are children is what there is emotionally.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like, do you think it's the same level of thinking, right? So they're giving this piece of advice of women are children. So when you're talking to a woman, kind of treat her like a child and don't treat her like a man, like you would treat a man.
Treat a man, yeah.
And that's the same, to me, I guess that's what I'm seeing is the same kind of, not the same exact logical connection, but the same level of thinking, I guess.
I'm not really sure I follow the question. So
okay.
It's the same level of thinking in that it's,
I mean, because it's like you're observing some trait.
Yeah, so the trait,
and then you observe that there may be some truth once in a while that you saw, but it doesn't mean women or children are like that.
Yeah, the trait that it's picking up on is relative to each other. Women are more emotional and men are more repressed. Or you could either say women are more emotional, or you could say women are the exact right amount of emotional. Men are not emotional enough. I mean, you could anything like that. You could,
which seems more correct to my observations for me. I
don't know what the right amount. I don't think there is a right amount of emotionality. I mean, it's
well, okay, that's a whole. I agree.
There is such a thing as
too emotional,
repressed, and there is such a thing as like childishly emotional. You have no emotional self-regulation. But then, like outside of those two groups, like what's the right amount? I mean, it just seems to me that there'd be completely healthy variations such that some people, or maybe people make the choice not to show their emotions in public, but they're very emotional.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess I was just trying to get at, is there some
but that's
kind of
that's like the fact
thing,
that's the basis that they point to is like, look, women are more emotional.
Yeah.
And
so just talk to them like children, that will get you more results is kind of the idea behind that. Which is based on
partially it's get more results, but partially it's just so you don't have any false expectations or you know what you're getting into. Like you wouldn't expect a child to, children throw tantrums, and like if you're expecting your 5-year-old to act like a 40-year-old man, you don't have that false expectation. And okay, so if I'm expecting a woman to process some conflict the way a 40-year-old man, picking a kind of age of a man's prime where he's most in control of himself, then don't expect that out of women. Now, again, so there's like a little scintilla of fact in that we notice this difference between how emotional men and women are, that they want to conceptualize as women are like children. Now, maybe the women that people who follow the red pill attract are like that. But women generally, I do not see any reason to think that's true of them.
Well, and so it seems like underlying the theory is this view of determinism, that we are determined by our instincts, our genetics, things of that nature. So we are just who we are. So women are more emotional as, qua woman because they're a woman, and they have nothing outside, no abilities or free will or agency to control their own emotions which I have to say is absurd because I have dated repressed women. I think I'm not as repressed. Like I feel like I'm the opposite of some. Like I'm probably more emotional than a lot of women.
You can't think of it as, oh, the red pill is wrong for thinking women are more emotional than men. Like I think that something like that is probably true. Women are, emotions come easier to them, or
I think culturally they're encouraged.
They're encouraged,
sure.
or
And men aren't.
There can be all kind of like, you can just observe that fact that women are wear their emotions on their sleeves and men don't. Let's say
less
so. So I wouldn't want to commit to any particular, like, are women naturally by their nature more emotional? Yeah. Okay.
No, what
that might be true, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, but what I'm saying is I was trying to get to the idea of the advice that's being given to different people and the underlying viewpoints that they're using, which is they're seeing us and they're pigeonholing humans, including women. And I mean, you mentioned this in your article about radical feminism does the same thing for men, and or about men in a sense that they're all kind of rapists. Or, not all of feminism, but there's a branch of feminism.
Do you know the Schrodinger's rapist thing? No. The idea is that every man you meet, like, you don't know, is he, like, every new man you encounter, you don't, like, it's like the Schrodinger's cat thought experiment in physics. Like, under certain conditions, you have a cat in a box, you can't see the cat. Is it alive? Is it dead? You don't know. And this is a kind of inherent puzzle to this physics, allegedly. It's an inherent puzzle. And the parallel is, well, every man you meet, is he a rapist? Is he not? And, like, there's something in men that could make them all, could make them all that way. And you don't know whether it's tripped up in this guy or not.
But so that kind of determinism is what I'm, and what, when I was reading your article and listening to this stuff, and I was thinking about, I had a long time ago read a book by Raphael Patel called The Arab Mind. And there was another book by someone else, I can't remember, Strong Horse. I was reading some stuff about Middle Eastern and Islamic cultures. And it really reminded me of that. Like, the idea of why they encourage the hijab is not just to protect the woman. It's to protect the woman from the inner urges of a man, that a man is incapable of controlling his sexual desires. So if you go out and entice him, it's actually your fault. And it's like, because you did that and he didn't have any control over his urges. And that, I'm seeing the same kind of thing in a sense with this kind of view of the same kind of thinking, where it's like, people don't really have control over their urges. Women are just going to, cheat that. So we just have to figure out how to build a system around that. Or, what I'm seeing now with the Tradcons and all this stuff is like, let's just pigeonhole them into this old, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen type idea. Doesn't matter if they're not happy. That's not really the goal. The goal is merit. Even Jordan Peterson, his advice is happiness isn't the goal. Like, we're all suffering.
Well, if we're talking about sexual attraction and preference, like, if that's the part of the theory, the kind of the red pill view, there's a sense in which I don't want to come down unduly on the red pill. I think there's a lot of posturing as if people know why we're attracted to the things we are.
Okay. Yes. I agree with that 100%.
So you certainly,
sexual preference is the most confusing thing in the world.
You can certainly say,
like
as a statistical thing, men prefer X in a woman. You can
heterosexual men.
Heterosexual men. Yeah. So you can do surveys and look at their stated preferences. You can look at their actual behavior and look at revealed preferences, and you can kind of form a judgment. There'll be a bell curve, and the big lump in the middle, is the majority of men are most attracted to women in this certain age range with this certain body type with these certain facial features.
But have you heard of Data Clip's book? The data clips?
That's the one about OkCupid, right?
Yeah. Have you heard about that? Where it's like, sorry, I just have to point this out, where they noticed men will say they're open to relationships at their own age, but their swiping proves that they're only interested in 20 to 25
way lower age.
Yeah. So it's like a 40-year-old is going to do 20, 25-year-old, a 30, 20, 25 to 25-year-old. So there's obviously
right. You don't need that. You don't need that book to know that. I mean, who are the actresses that everybody says are hot? They're younger women in their 20s, and who are the most profitable? What's it called? OnlyFans and porn girls. It's young women in their 20s. It's not a secret.
The data's in.
Yeah, but now we have another data point that indicates the same thing. But so if anybody going around saying, I know why people prefer this to that, I think is almost always posturing. Like
Yeah.
maybe you have a good hypothesis, but I don't think we don't know why, even just something like gentlemen prefer blondes or something. Like some men really like blonde women. Some men really like Asian girls. Some Asian girls really like white guys. And some people, people have their little things that they're really into. And we don't know why do you like that kind of person? I don't know. I just really do. And like same, and it's not just, yeah. So it can change over a person's life, and you're not really sure why did it change? Why did it change? And I mean, just, you can kind of say that about, you can kind of have a view if you, when I was young, I liked, the wild girls are always out partying and, up for some new adventure. And now that I'm older, I want a woman who's, wants to settle down and that's a kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah. And you
thing.
see that in reverse with women.
Yeah,
it's
you see that in reverse.
They want the bad boy, and now they're like the guy who does the dishwasher properly.
Sure. But I mean, that's more like, what's your preference for a relationship? Like, if you're talking about viscerally, like, what gets you going? Yeah, your sexual preferences. Yes. We don't know why people are straight or gay or bi. We don't know why. There's been a lot of explanations. There's been a lot of explanations, and most of them are wrong. Most of them are either wrong or incomplete, or maybe there's something going for them, but they're unproven. Yeah. And we don't know why people have the kind of fetishes they do when it goes really weird and really wrong. When that sexual attraction is directed at something really unhealthy, like, where did that come from? Like, I don't know. Just at some point in my life, I was really into this, and I have no idea why. And what was it like to find out your own sexuality? Well, I mean, I don't know. I was a young kid. I don't even remember when. And all of a sudden, from one summer, I could care less about girls, and the next summer was all I could think about. And like, why? What I'm saying is, some of these red pill theories are in the genre of, why are people sexually attracted to what they are? They're trying to give you a story about that. And they're wrong, but it's not like anybody else has a better, like, they're especially wrong, but it's not like there's knowledge here. There are people who are answering those questions, taking it seriously, who don't know. And then there are people who are not taking it seriously at all and don't know. And I put the red pill in that category.
Yeah. And so the challenge of people, because you go to red pill, let's say you're a little bit healthier in terms of your psychology or whatever, and you're trying to just better your life. Mm-hmm. That's why you're actually going there. You're going to find all these bad things, but the issue is these confusing hypotheses maybe, and that are giving you views. The issue is you're trying to navigate and actually figure out what you want in my view, in a world where some of the stories and narratives that we've always told in history are kind of in flux. Mm-hmm. And we have, because of I don't know how to phrase it, but the creative, imaginative individuality that we are capable of in today's world, we really are, I think, in ways that we're not as easily able 150, 200 years ago to build whatever life we want to. If we want to be with two men, a dog, and a chicken, we have that ability more than in the past. Just because we're so wealthy, we have like these types of reasons.
Well, it's more. So like certain behaviors are more socially. I mean, so
the social thing.
So the main thing is just the political part. So if whatever you want to do, you're going to get killed for or in prison.
So there's just the freedom to do more.
There's political freedom, and then there's this social social tolerance of. Well,
but so the problem with that, of course, is that then you have to build and come up to your own values from scratch, in a sense. You have to figure out, So for instance, I was, on this show, I've talked about this many times about the history of love and marriage. Mm-hmm. Like the idea of marrying for love is really new.
Is recent. Yeah.
Like that was not what first off, most humans do not get married traditionally, like in the history. You are married to whoever you sleep with first. Mm-hmm. That's how peasants were. Mm-hmm. There was a courting marriage for, within the higher elements or the higher aspects of society. But this whole story is something we're inheriting, and we have to either accept it, deny it, reject it, or build our own. Mm-hmm. And that to me is that's where it becomes really confusing. And then when you add into it all this, I want to have a lot of sex, but then this doesn't, match with that, like getting this kind of woman who's, maybe more not going to have this hypergamy where she has more options. Like, it's just, to me, it's like so confusing. So it's more than ever we need some kind of helpful guide.
Right. So I think what you're raising is there's a what's good for me question. So if you're just a regular old like straight guy who wants,
That's me, man.
nowadays you got to say this, who just
Wait, what's it called?
normative or
normative cis or something like that.
Yeah. So if you're just a regular old straight guy and you just want a regular old straight girl, like all the things are there for you to just, you just got to find her. And then there's all these kind of like structures there for you to just execute on your plans together. But the question doesn't really occur to you, is this good or healthy for me? But then now if you deviate from that, just based on the fact that you're not like everybody else, it's going to occur. Like, do I really want to be this way? Like, it's a common for young gay people to go through, like they fight with it. Like now, maybe less so, but it used to be very common. My understanding from talking to gay and lesbian people is that, you'd go through this period where you're like, no, I'm not this way. And like, you deny it or try to fight it, or maybe can I make myself not this way? And part of that is, like, is this good for me? Is part of the question. Is this good for me? And I think now it's pretty clear that gay and lesbian relationships are completely healthy and valuable to the people who have that preference. But there are other things that deviate from the hetero norm that that there's still a real question. Like, if you have some fetish that's, not really harming anybody, is it harming yourself if you engage in that? So like extreme but consensual BDSM, or obsession with particular body parts, or activities that aren't normally sexual, PG. But like, is that bad for me? What's the standard of determining that? And I don't just mean that as like a personal question. You can think of that as like, if you're a psychologist or an ethicist, like, is this actually a harmful, fetish or paraphilia or something? And I don't know how to answer that question. Now, obviously, if somebody's being seriously hurt or it's interfering with other necessary life functions, like if your fetish is to give your dominatrix all your money, which is a real thing. Yeah, okay, that's obviously putting your sexual desires in stark conflict with your ability to just like go through the normal functions of life, pay for your car, and pay for your house. So there are certain things like that, but other things that don't have any obvious conflict. If you're just really into some kind of, unconventional play, let's say, you might think, well, what's wrong with this? But it's also kind of weird, and I don't like it. If you're into like scat things or something like that, like, okay, that's physically gross to people who aren't into that. But like, what's like give me the psychological theory why I'm like a bad person, or why I'm harming, like I'm harming myself in some deep way for doing this or for indulging in this. Like, I can't make the desire go away. Like, that's part of having a sexual desires, is you can't will it away.
Yeah.
So, is it right to act on it?
Yeah. So,
no, but the whole point is, I think there's just not knowledge here.
Yes.
And you can, in individual cases, you can.
Well, there's not universal scientific knowledge, but you can have knowledge about yourself.
There's not universal scientific knowledge. Even so, I took an extreme one, but like I said, so imagine really kind of extreme masochistic, sadistic, but consensual kind of BDSM stuff. And you go and do your thing in private with your consenting partner who's also into it. And then you go about your life regularly. Like, there are people like that who just live regular lives and they have this thing. Is that bad for them? Like, is there some sense in which that's not, like, it's coming from some deep, harmful self-evaluation?
I mean, I can imagine there could be.
There could be, yeah. But, and again, my point isn't to say any of these things.
Like, people who want to be belittled all.
Yeah, but my point isn't to say any of these things are or are not okay. My point is that in individual cases, you might be able to say, like, this is destroying your entire life. That alone makes it bad for you. But in the cases where you kind of have it, like, this is the bedroom play I do, and then that's the only place it affects. Does anybody have any knowledge about how to evaluate and think about those things? I think the answer is not really.
Yeah, and yet you have to figure out how
And
to
yet
do
you have to
that.
figure out how to do
Yeah,
it.
like if you want a
Yeah.
full flourishing life, if you, you know,
Is
if
poly
you
is
don't-
polyamory healthy?
Yeah, so I think that I'm very skeptical
Yeah,
of it.
I'm
Personally.
skeptical of it too. I think
Just because humans are limited and, you know, in their capacity in general, we're
Yeah.
we're a limited consciousness. We can't, you know, so yeah, I mean, but I can understand people who want to try it.
Yeah, I can, and I can, you know, you can give a case, you can make a case in its defense that I don't find convincing, but I'm also not confident I can disprove it. So again, the point is to just say that there's a lot of ignorance in the whole sphere of what is good for us,
which I think is important to acknowledge.
Is important to
I think
acknowledge,
and I think that's your point. I think that's part of the problem out there is people, and I'm gonna say Rollo Tomassi only through my friend, so I can't quote him.
You can't quote him.
But my friend is someone who really likes him and reads him. But the idea is of what Rollo Tomassi is kind of saying is like, this is just the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what the red pill kind of indicates is I'm just telling you the facts, man. This is how women are. Yeah. This is how sexual behavior is. But you have to, what you're saying, and I agree with a lot, you know, it's very important, is that you have to just acknowledge we don't really know a lot about what these preferences come from, why they are. I think for me, the duty of yourself is to learn about yourself.
You can say though what they are in a statistical way.
Well, sure.
But
that doesn't necessarily.
But I think that's the kind of knowledge that actually you can act. You don't if you want to be more successful dating, you can have a strategy of just playing the numbers, right? Like most women find the following. They like guys.
Most women subs, they call themselves, right? So
no, I don't even mean stuff like that. I mean like.
Well, but did you see?
Like, do women in America today like beards or clean shaven?
Oh, okay.
And you can you can see if let's say you did a survey and it was 80% of women prefer a clean shaven face.
Yeah.
And that's both a stated and revealed preference.
Then shave your beard. Yeah.
Then if you
telling me to shave my beard, is that
well, what I'm saying is, why do you have the facial hairstyle that you do?
Because I don't have a good face.
Yeah, but if that's if you think to yourself, well, I grew a beard because I thought it would make me look more manly, so I could meet more women. Turns out that that's not true. So what's the point of the beard? Now, if you like the beard because I don't know, you kind of identify it. You like looking like maybe you going for the lumberjack thing or something, then that's another reason. So that kind of information can be valuable to know, but you don't need a whole theory. Like if you then just, women don't like a clean shaven face because beards, it seems like you have something to hide. And like you start philosophizing about it and it's like, you don't know that. And you don't need to, for the purposes of, I want to make a better dating profile on Tinder or whatever. You don't need to know that.
Well, so I was going to bring up this podcast, this Lex Friedman podcast where he interviewed, and I cannot remember her name, but she is a sex worker.
I know how to spell the name. I think it's Isla.
Yeah, something that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she goes into fetishes, and Lex was saying, and I don't know if this is true, that she probably has the most robust study on fetishes in the world. I don't know if that's true.
As far as I know, her data gathering is Twitter polls.
Okay.
So
then that's probably not the most accurate.
or polls she sends out to her Twitter followers. Like I don't know what her methods are. So in fairness to her, I follow her. I know who that is. I follow her on Twitter, I think, or at least. Enough of the people I follow her because she comes up in my recommended feed a lot. So I know who this is.
Popular.
Yeah, and I know the poll, like the data. I've seen some of that, and it's everything I've seen is either just a direct Twitter poll or Twitter link to some other polling software or something. So if that's all she's getting, then you know something about the people who follow. Ayala, however you say that name, you know something about the people who follow and happen upon her things, but I don't know if that's not representative. Now, in fairness to her, maybe she's got other things she's done that are. I thought
she was studying, I thought she was actually going to school for this or something, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, one of the points I remember her making that I think it's kind of similar to what you're saying that I thought was interesting was she was making a point about the the number or the percentage of women who claim to want to be a subordinate in the sexual preference versus the number of men who want to be a dom or dominant in the sexual preference. There's a huge gap where there's way more women who want to be subordinate than there are men who claim they want sexually to be dominant. So, I mean, that seems to be something that is, if it's true, is an important thing to maybe learn about.
Yeah.
Because it could help you if you are a dominant, or if there's something you can do. Because to me, if, I think preferences, because we don't have a lot of understanding, I think there may be something you could do to activate or to become more like this. How much, preferences you could do.
I mean, that's a little different from like what kind of facial hair do I have, or what kind of hairstyle do I have? Because if
it's more
presumably the woman who wants to be a sub wants the guy not just to be dominant, but to want to be it. So
exactly,
if you're just well, I could meet more women if I go to a class on how to be a good dom, and do I like it? No, I don't hate it.
Yeah.
Like that's not what anybody's looking for.
Yeah.
But how you style your facial hair is just like whatever. Like it's not
as preference.
Now if it's a deep part of your identity, then sure, then don't shave or don't grow a beard. But if it's just, sometimes I have a stubble, sometimes I shave clean. Like if it's just something
you're just talking about like the kind of preferences that are superficial preferences and adapting to that to some degree versus these other.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody modifies their behavior to some degree. Nobody never showers and never does anything to their hair and never shaves. Like people who look like that are homeless or crazy.
Yeah.
Like everybody does something to take care of their appearance a little bit. They'll look in the mirror and, go like this or whatever.
Yeah.
So what way do you do that? Well, and why do you do that? Well, you want to look your best. And you want to, what does that even mean? Like look your best to yourself?
Yeah.
For what reason? Look your best on camera, look your best for a date. Like you do different things. And what I'm saying is, if you know a little bit about what modern American women tend to find,
and in your region,
where
you live, I think Austin might be a little different than like
maybe so, but yeah. So
but there's universalities to something in the culture.
Change your hair. If you have a hairstyle that was in vogue 20 years ago, and now you're divorced and you're 40.
Change your hairstyle.
Yeah, especially because
if
you're a middle-aged man, the kind of young hip hairstyle doesn't hit
Stupid
right.
Crazy Love, or Crazy. Ever seen that movie? Crazy Stupid Love with Michael Scott from Steve Carell and Ryan Gosling.
No, I haven't seen it.
Because that's kind of what happens to him. Is he's like been married since he was like 18.
Yeah.
Has a grown adult daughter, and he separates from his wife, and then he meets Ryan Gosling, who's this like hip, cool in a suit guy, and then he's Steve Carell's like in his New Balance sneakers and his cheap jeans, and looks like a dad, and then Ryan Gosling kind of transforms. It's kind of like a makeover for men.
Makeover for men,
and it teaches him how to like
makeover for middle-aged men.
Yeah, for middle-aged men, and then he teaches them like the game, and like they go to bars, and he learns how to pick up women and things like that. But of course, it leads to bad things.
I'm sure it leads to conflict and.
Oh yeah, it leads to a lot of misery and eventually things like that, and bad, which it's probably a good thing to point out that it's not going to necessarily be fulfilling to do this. But so there's an earlier point I was actually trying to make about the kind of these trends that we see, and that what I see happening is people pushing, like people in the in Red Pill, in the manosphere, they're pushing a kind of they're pushing this ideology that on some level they're moving into that. And because for whatever reason, some of these things, I don't know if they collapse or what happens, I'm just seeing this move into this Tradcon and JD Vance was just, I think like people have started associating him with the pronatalist actually, and things like that, because he and other people on the political right are saying things. What was the quote? Like the government is being run by a bunch of cat ladies. And so it's like this idea that, and this was a couple of years before.
Tradcon is they want to go back to the kind of Mad Men 50s, 60s kind of.
That's the broad view.
Yeah, the man is the head of the household and works, and the woman is a.
But this is popular now. Yeah. This is becoming more and more popular, and I think a lot of it is the same kind of thing. Is you start, you try to do this whole pickup thing, and either works or it doesn't, and it leads to something something like, I'm still miserable. I'm 35 and I'm miserable, or I'm 40 and I'm miserable and I maybe I had sex a couple more times than I would have, but I'm still alone and got broken up with. So now what? And now I find myself attracted to this idea of, well, this sounds like, yeah, I'd like to have this kind of household. I don't want to be lonely anymore.
But the Tradcon as a movement is less a men's, like there are women who
yes.
who prefer this too. Yeah.
But I think that's relevant because it's not like you pointed out in your article and your new ideal with Nikos that there's a kind of mirror to the radical feminist things and the red pill type philosophy. And perhaps this is what we're kind of getting from them.
Well, look, if all you know how to do is, I don't mean all in a sense of trivializing, but if all you know how to do is have a career and make money, and that's all you need to do to get a wife, you don't have to think about what is she like other than somebody to have money. I mean, that's a kind of easy mode for getting paired up, right? So everybody every male who's a functioning adult probably has some kind of job, some kind of income. And if you don't, there's no shame, anxiety, or you don't feel like less of a man if you try to get a better job.
Sure.
If you're single, almost never or never had any female affection, you feel like shit. It's humiliating. It's embarrassing. You don't talk to people about it. You can go to a career counselor and there's like legitimate people and then like
the whole system.
There's a whole system of getting a better job.
Coaches and mentors.
Yeah. They're not, those people aren't BSers. Whereas if you try to get that kind of advice about improving your sex life or your love life, like 70% of the people are just completely full of crap. So if you're in a time, or if you revive a time where all you need to do to attract a woman is just have a good job, that's a kind of, you don't have to deal with any of this other problem about, what kind of guy and what kind of personality and how good looking do I have to be and like all of that stuff. There's just an easy cure. You just kind of get one. Somebody introduces you and like, he's single and works for so and so. And she's, oh wow, I'm 20 and I'm a woman who can't work, so that works out for me. And that's the kind of fantasy people have. I mean, how accurate it is, I'm not sure, of what pairing was like prior to the sexual revolution.
How accurate it is interesting.
Yeah, is an interesting question. But that's certainly how
it's definitely the depiction in movies.
And I love the show Mad Men, and it's in the first couple of seasons when the lead is married to Betty Draper. So the lead is named Dawn, and Betty Draper is his wife. She just, she's just a housewife, stays at home. And how did he meet her? He met, he had a nice sales job, and he met her in a store, and he's kind of handsome. Or he's handsome, and she's pretty, and so it kind of just like that's all he had to do is, I have a job, and it works out. Just women are just naturally interested in me because don't look like a slob, and I have a good job.
Yeah.
Which isn't
a bad start.
Which isn't a bad start, yeah. But now it's like, she doesn't need a provider. Like women now don't need a provider, is their thinking. It's like she's got her own job, so that's off the table.
Which is kind of true.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true.
Yeah, so you have to offer something else.
You have to offer something else, right. She doesn't need that. She might still find that attractive, like, he's going places and he's got a career, but it's no longer a necessity.
Yeah. At least with certain, I mean, that's like a strata of society. It's not all. It's a strata. It's not the whole. There's obviously many women who don't have that, and may even look for.
But I mean, I think it's at this point it's a little strange not to at least have the ability to have a job as a woman.
Oh, okay. Right? Yeah, like okay.
It used to be. That's weird. Like,
So there's
like that's the whole plot. Like half the plot of the first season of Mad Men, which starts in the early '60s.
Yeah.
Is there's this young girl at the ad agency who wants to.
She wants a career.
She wants a career
not just
there.
a job to wait for a man.
And part of what's interesting is like this lead guy is like, all I care about is good work, and she does good work, so he kind of mentors her a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's weird for the time.
Yeah, and that's
so. But people, the whole,
and that's also that culture.
Yeah, the whole thing though is like, no, there's something good about that. Like, And to make it on the women's side, the case is like, look, you want a career, that means you're doing all this work and focus on your career, and you don't have time for kids. But so, and it's not true that you can have it all, in the sense of like women's fertility starts to run out in a way that a man's doesn't. So a man can be 50 and still have kids. The older a woman gets, the more, dangerous to both herself and the potential offspring is. And
so there's some truths.
There's some truths. And then there's this kind of a little bit of bullshit around it. Like, no, you can have, and certainly people give birth later into their 30s and 40s, but
I've
like
definitely heard this.
that becomes very
hard.
And it's hard, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Like you have to go to fertility doctors. You can do it.
Yeah.
But the longer you wait, the harder it is. And then you get a bunch of, like JD used to say, old cat ladies, or like they missed out and they kind of fell for the idea that I could just do it whenever, and then it didn't happen for them. So you get like this kind of regret around this. And there's a certain, that's certainly true of some people. And then where I'm going is just, you hear young women hearing about this, and maybe they're also Christian, they're involved in some kind of religious, and they say, yeah, I'd rather just have my career be a mom.
Yeah.
And then you get the Tradcon. So you get the women who want this because they're kind of disillusioned with this feministy type stuff, and you get the guys who want to be guaranteed.
Neither seem to be leading to personal satisfaction.
Yeah, no, right. I'm explaining where this is coming from.
What I'm saying is I agree with that.
And then the two kind of groups like meet,
kind of
merge, and it's like, I want a career. I don't want to have to do all this Tinder stuff. I just want to. I want
finance, blue eyes.
Yeah, I want a pretty wife who will give me a family.
Yeah.
And I don't care if she's got a career or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, and probably having a career makes it harder to do that. And the woman says, yeah, I want to have a whole bunch of kids, and if I have a career that is difficult or near impossible, and these two groups who think this way meet, and then you have a social movement.
And that seems to be what's happening now, and that's what
you can't divorce it from the fact that these people are largely Christian, and there's a kind of
and I think that's what's out in the culture. So that's the philosophical basis, and I think this is something that Ayn Rand is really good at pointing out, is that there is going to be that philosophical connection or something, and that it's going to eventually lead to some kind of, what does she say? Something about admixtures will always get to something. Pure or something like that.
Well, I mean, life is difficult, requires thought and work, and that's just
some people don't want to do that work.
Some people don't want to do that work, but every time you're in that kind of situation where, this part of life is really hard and I'm not sure what to do, that's when the need for philosophy really comes front and center. And now you have this. Well, I'm already sort of a Christian because I was born into a. Whatever, my parents were Catholic.
Now you're a cultural Christian.
Now I don't know what, should I have kids now and not have a career, or should I have a career or what should I do? And then you have this voice giving you what seems like advice, or what not seems like is advice, whether it's good advice or is it another question. Yeah, so there'll always be something to come in and fill that void. Now for young men who are just completely confused about how to have a love life, what they get is manosphere stuff.
So what would be like well, actually I wanted to say one thing you say about the Christians I wanted to point out is the one thing that is people are starting to observe about the pronatalism movement. Like I found the names Simone and Malcolm Collins is one of the prominent examples, is that they're atheists, but they behaviorally and a lot of their underlying ideology seems very religious, traditional, even though they're claiming to be atheists, right? They're saying we're atheists, and they name their children things like Industry Americus. That in one article, this is in the Intelligencer, and it's, talking about the new right, is saying that the children have Randian rather than biblical names. But in reality, they have a lot in common with biblical Christian perspectives on family, on corporal punishment, even on things of that nature.
I don't know what to make of that connection, not knowing more about the natalist movement. I mean, so one thing, it's not true that Christianity has a monopoly on valuing families.
Sure.
People in all kind of cultures are proud of their kids, proud of their family.
Yeah.
So that's a almost
I guess,
universal
that's
thing.
not what I'm saying.
So the fact that people want to have more kids, think it's good to have more kids, doesn't strike me as particularly Christian. It might strike you as Christian if that's like the only other movement pushing that in the United States. You see the similarity, but
I mean, I guess it's because there's duty-bound premises that seem to be ingrained in it. It's
maybe,
not about
but
like have a kid for your own personal.
But I mean,
happiness.
Brian Kaplan, the economist, who as far as I know is not a Christian, has a whole book on why you should have kids, and it's all a whole bunch of selfish reasons to have kids, and he has like 7 kids. So is that Christian? I mean, no, he actually enjoys kids, and he's trying to convince you that you might, if you don't have kids, what seems to loom large for a lot of people is, well, that's a way less money to spend on fun and, the things I like to do now. And sometimes you got to become convinced that having the kids, that's going to be more rewarding than going to concerts every weekend or whatever you're spending your money on. So that kind of argument doesn't strike me as Christian. Now that if the natalists have some, I don't know, end of the world thing going on, like you mentioned, maybe there's some connection there.
I mean, I guess I'm going to read this quote to you then, because I don't want to come across as like I'm not anti-family and anti-kid. I'm very pro-family. I want to have a family. That's not what I'm saying. When I'm looking at their arguments of, this is a numbers game focused on producing the maximum number of heirs. They're associated, and they are connected to the effective altruism movement. And the purpose of maximizing number of heirs, not to inherit assets, but genes, outlook, and worldview. That's a quote. And so to me, it's more like what is underlying the connection. Like there seems to be there's a fundamentalist Christian belief that large families are a blessing from God, blessing of God. And you should maximize the number. And all they seem to be doing is replacing that with science and data and saying we should they're just saying, scientifically, we should maximize the number of, heirs that we have, and that's it. And that's what to me is concerning. The idea of like, first off, if you want to promote having children, the value of having children, come on the show. I'm all for that. I will talk all day about the value of kids. I was a teacher. I like kids. I like to, like I said, but to tell people who are confused about their happiness, what they're trying to accomplish, that look, just have as many kids as you can.
Yeah. Just
maximize your heirs, period. Try to get, spread your worldview and, things like that. Like that's the whole premise of it. That's where I'm just in this burgeoning new movement.
That's where it sounds.
And then the arguments of the genetic stuff about, look, the world population's going down. So those are the two arguments I've heard.
Well, it sounds like something,
and that's it.
It sounds like something some Christians say. So have more kids to have a greater influence over the culture, spread your worldview. Yes. Like that's, maybe I've just never heard it before. That sounds to me Protestant, not Catholic.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
So it's
quiverful is the connection they use in this particular article. So that is a particular Christian fundamentalist view that children are of fun. Now, again, I don't think there's a lot of intellectual discussions about this yet. It's like a year. I mean, NatalCon, I think was the first one, was like last year. So this is very new. I'm just, reading about it because it's like, here's what, it's Elon Musk is obviously very big proponent of maximizing the amount of kids you can have. And he's telling people to do that all the time. And then you have people like JD Vance who's criticizing. So when he calls these women in
cat ladies,
when he calls them cat ladies, it's not, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a cat lady necessarily. I mean, if you made a mistake in realizing, I waited too long, but I want kids, that's a problem. But if you, like many women or men, choose to not have kids to pursue a political career or another career, then that's a good thing. They're like obviously cat lady is a derogatory term. He means it derogatorily. Because there is, I've seen this also related to this argument, is this idea that, okay, you're, like I think it was applied to Sarah Silverman and these other kind of leftist female people where, well, they didn't have kids So now they're being this kind of advocate because their kind of motherly instincts is being applied ideologically to us, and they're trying to control us as, like a mother with their kids or something like that. Like
it's pseudo psychological.
Yeah, and it's nonsense, I think. But I think JD Vance is kind of implying that where now maybe there's truth to these women are, cat ladies and they're miserable because they didn't. I don't know. I'm not going to psychologize. I don't even know who's specifically talking about. He mentioned a couple people, but my point is that connection is what's worrisome to me. And I see it growing, and I see more people moving toward that. I see more, even young objectivist men that I've talked to who are successful in many ways, and they're frustrated with this thing. I've seen them have these kind of flirting with these ideas a little bit.
Of natalism.
Yeah, like pronatalism with this kind of like, the family traditional, like, why don't we have more women like this? Like it's problematic that they're like that kind of thing becomes, the envy of women who are like this. I think that becomes more prevalent the more frustrated you get.
Well, I mean, ask the women who actually have a career and have a family how they do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, plenty of people do it. It's not impossible.
I think a lot of people do
it. It's certainly going to be difficult. I assume, but I'm sure there probably are books about this. People write all kind of advice, how to balance a career and a family as a career woman. I'm sure there's a lot of advice, so maybe some of it's good, but people do it. So why you would prefer, why would you prefer somebody who has no career and is just a mom for 15 years and then doesn't have anything to do, over somebody who has a career and can be a mom and can balance the two? Why would you prefer the one over the other? That seems strange to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to me and maybe we could start wrapping up or something here, is like the important advice needs to be something along the lines of how to think about your own life, how to plan and organize your own life, and how to navigate the confusing world to build the life that you want. Mm-hmm. And that everybody can be different. You don't have to be a model of everyone else, that there may be something you can learn from other models, but you have to figure out, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you in your life, and you have to figure out what kinds of things are going to make you happy. Do you need to have kids? Mm-hmm. So for instance, I mentioned love and marriage. Like, do you want to maximize for resources? Then that's actually the traditional way of marriage is that you marry because of your merging economic resources to maximize your ability to have the most resources. And sure, you get two people with $250,000 incomes. That's a hell of a nice life right there, right? Mm-hmm. So do that, and then don't worry about kids, or get $5 million in the bank and then get a nanny, and you're good, like stuff like that. Like, you could do that, but then when you're mating, you're finding your match, you're prioritizing that, and you may be deprioritizing romantic love. Mm-hmm. And what is romantic love, and how does that come about? That's a whole other conversation, of course.
Well,
you have to figure it out. That's something that's scary thing.
That's something that's revealingly absent from the discussion, like theories of attraction in relationships. If you look at especially things targeted towards men. It's about maximizing sexual partners, almost a lot of it. Somebody sent a comment to one of the places ARI posted my article. There's comments on it, and it was, well, what about this guy? This guy's not like that. This red pill guy. And I watched a video of this guy he talked for 2 hours about, and the title of the video was something like "Love, Sex, and Marriage," and he didn't talk about love at all. It was all a sexual relationship as a kind of transaction. That his advice was that a woman, to keep a man, should be the sluttiest version of herself. And this guy has a PhD not a PhD, a PsyD. He's a psychologist.
PsyD?
PHY. PsyD. It's a different kind of doctorate. PsyD. Okay. Like there's medical doctorate. Anyway, so, and he's a kind of guy giving advice to men and, women also. And at no point did he say anything about any love, romantic attraction. It was all just a transactional view of, and I'm all for thinking about a relationship as a kind of trade, but there's a difference between trade and transaction. So he's thinking of it as like, you give sex and he gives resources. And like, that's the whole framework.
What's purely material trade.
But I mean, material trade can, like, think about a friendship. So part of a friendship is doing material things for your friend. Like, can you give me a ride to the airport?
Sure.
And like, if you ask your friend for material help, nothing major, over and over again, and they say no every time, and you're doing things to help them, that's a material. There's something
I'm not
unbalanced
denigrating
about
material. I'm saying like, I guess that's all I mean by
the transaction.
Like
by transaction,
a trade
I mean,
can be material, but the trade could also be just a conversation where
sure,
we're enjoying
but
ourselves.
transaction is more like a one-for-one view of it. So these dollars for this product, this amount of sex for this amount of
that's called a process.
Relationship stability. Yeah. So that's what I mean by transactional. I think that's not the right way to think about the trade that occurs in.
There is.
I mean, some relationships are literally transactional. Like, you get paid a certain salary to do certain things for your employer. That's literally transactional. But there are non-transactional trades that people engage in all the time, like friendship and romance, and parent-child is a kind of trade. Each partner gets something out of the relationship. It's something different, radically different. And a mentor and a mentee, like, there's a trade there. It's not transactional in the sense of, you need to give me this much mentorship if you expect me to improve this, this amount. You can't think of it that way. That's the wrong way to think about it. So that's what I mean by a transactional view of the relationship. So it's right to think about it as a trade. Like, what does she get out of it? Like, this is one of the things that's missing from a lot of advice for men in dating, where it's
one-sided in terms of what they get out of it.
Yeah,
it's clear what I get out of the beautiful woman. What does she get out of it?
Why would she want to date you? Like, if there's this attitude, like, society's unjust because I'm owed. Like, this is more the incel kind of thing. Like, you're just owed a woman, and you don't have one, and therefore there's something wrong with the world. And it's like, no, what do you have? Like, she needs to get something from you. You don't want just any woman. You want one that you find valuable, attractive, etc.
And that takes a lot of work to really realize that. I think, though, I don't know.
To realize that as
because you think of yourself as a good person. Internally,
you think of yourself.
You're like, I'm wonderful. If like, I remember.
Well, I mean, not everybody does. Some people are.
That's true. Yeah. There's unfortunately some of that. But I guess I remember when I was young, teenager, whatever, and I would have another breakup or whatever. Yeah. Like, and I was like, if only she got to know me or see me here or something like that. Like, I had that kind of spiral going into this. She just didn't get to know me, or she didn't, because I thought of myself as really amazing, but the reality was that I wasn't. There was some, maybe not with that particular woman, but just there's something you're not offering, or if you don't realize you're not projecting properly, or you think you're projecting, but you're not really projecting it this way.
One of the things that happens is, as you get older, and especially if you stay single and like get experience, and you have you actually grow in what you understand, is I think you'll find that you're better at picking out somebody who will respond to your advances. Because it's not.
That's the big mistake.
When you're
every woman you talk to is
when you're a teenager, or if you don't,
at me.
Like, if you don't mature, if you don't mature, there's kind of like, you kind of fall in love a little bit with every girl who's nice to you.
Yeah, exactly. And which turns some women into like cynics about men. Right? It's like, oh my god, another one of these guys.
Yeah. There's a song that has a line that's something like, I secretly in love with everyone I grew up with. It's the band The National has this. It's like, which
I get that.
That's a kind of immaturity, and it's fine to be immature when you're 14, 15, 16. But like at some point,
I was like 20.
At some point,
I was a late bloomer.
At some point, it gets less and less excusable.
Start to learn it.
But and hopefully you start to learn, and then like it's because part of the thing you think about is, well, what kind of woman do I want, and what kind of woman would want the kind of guy I am? And then you get better at just finding the positive to your negative charge. You kind of And when you're younger, it's just this generalized thing. I want a girlfriend, and like, what kind of girl do you want?
Especially if you're
a
an
pretty
outcast,
one, yeah,
like loner, and you don't talk to people in general, and then you definitely don't talk to women, and then you're basically falling in love with a idealized
an idea of a person,
idea of who she is, not who she is, which I think is also part of maturing.
But that's
figuring out.
I mean, and that's where that's where like infatuations come from.
Yeah,
it's like, well, she's pretty and she's nice to me, so she must be, and then you invent this whole story about who she really is, and just not that person. Yeah. So, see, one of the things that's missing from a lot of this advice for young men is like helping them develop that kind of perspective, or that kind of, not perspective, that kind of method of self-improvement. And that's why, like I say in the article, a lot of the I call it common sense kind of advice and this is the advice I would give to young guys. Like, there are certain high reward, easy things to do, comparatively easy things to do, that you can start with, that'll both actually get you positive responses from women, but it'll also get you in the mode of thinking about, like, what do they actually like, what do I have to offer? What do they actually want from me? And that's why I say things like being, learning to be more social, getting in shape is a big one, learning to just kind of present yourself in a better way. And I don't mean becoming like the best dressed guy in every room or something, but like learning that maybe your faded Simpsons t-shirt and your gym shorts are not what you should wear to social gatherings if you're trying to meet someone. And like, maybe you should not have greasy hair all the time. Like that kind of thing, like, is
low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit.
For
Now
sure.
Some of those things, like becoming more social and going to the gym and getting in shape, are not like low-hanging fruit. They take a lot of effort. But it's especially getting in shape is not psychologically painful and difficult the way maybe becoming more social is.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of thing that if you do it right, once it becomes noticeable, has a really strong feedback loop. That's why it's one of my favorite early advice. Like, what's the first thing you should do?
But it's also not just for dating. Like,
well, yeah. So there's other reasons. There's other reasons to do it.
And I think that's
one of the things that
teaches you something about women too, is that it's not just that. It's, I think they're also, or just dating is like, you're not just, if you do it just for that one purpose, one, I think you might take shortcuts, which could be damaging. But then two, I think you don't realize that part of what, in my experience, what many women have, complimented me on working out is not because there was a time when I looked more muscular. And I remember I looked in front of the gym with my girlfriend, or in front of the mirror with my girlfriend, and she's like, "Oh, cute." And she didn't really care that much, I could tell. And she's like, "Well, I think I'm actually more interested, or I like you more because you're passionate about it, not because of it." And so anyway, the underlying thing is, like, if you start falling in love with things and you develop passions, including health, which I think is an important one we should all have, because you only have one body. That has so many other benefits than just like, oh, I go to the gym. Because you see this in bro culture, right? Like,
we could go down the list of the reasons why it's good, to reasons why it can benefit you too. And going to the gym is something you and I have in common, but I don't mean to use that as like a frozen abstraction. I mean, like, when I think of getting in shape, I mean, like, learn a sport that you like or something. And
that's how I think. Fall in love with
join a softball league and like go to practice and like
something
run some more and do something physical, and like, because
don't eat donuts every day.
Yeah, if you size up a young guy and he's like, why can't I meet a girl? Like, one of the things on the list is almost certainly going to be lose or gain 20 pounds.
Well, especially if you ask him, like, well, show me women you're attracted to.
Yeah.
Because like,
that's another thing.
If he's attracted to a woman who's fit,
yeah,
then it's like, well, hold on. So if you're attracted to a woman that looked like you, then you probably have a good chance.
Right.
But if you are attracted to this stellar, Olympic gymnast, like, why the hell? Like, but unless you're Elon Musk, like, what are you offering her?
That's the think about. That's related. That's a good example. That's a good example. So there's these so-called incel guys that's involuntarily celibate. It's like, well, show me the kind of woman you would be uncelibate for,
Yeah.
and you're not going to get the female version of them.
Yeah.
You're going to get like a, kind of like an OnlyFans looking girl or something like that. And it's like, you're voluntarily celibate because and
I never thought of that. Sorry, it's not funny.
But it is funny in the sense that people
it's a ridiculous kind of
when people have self-caused suffering, let's say, or self-caused problems that are obvious to outsiders, that can be funny. Like that is, and you kind of deserve to be laughed at a little bit. Now, it's not like the way you would approach it as their mentor, but
as their friend,
as their friend, you're gonna be like, yo, bro, what are you doing?
Like my friends will be like, dude, you're like, I remember I sat in a car a long time ago.
Sometimes pointing out that your friend is being ridiculous can snap them out of what they're doing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think and this is one thing I appreciate about, good guy friends. I remember I was sitting in the car. This is a long time ago before I started working out ever. Yeah. And I'm a big guy now. I'm always been big, but I remember I just said something and I was like, yeah, I never thought of myself as that fat. And he's like, dude, you're fat. Yeah.
I saw,
and I was like, okay, yeah, I guess.
I saw a meme the other day. It made me laugh. It was a woman says to her female friend, "Am I fat?" And the friend says, "No, you're beautiful." And then the guy says to his male friend, "Am I fat?" And he says, "Bro, I know 5 fat guys, and you're 4 of them." Like so there's something that
I've
can
seen that
be
meme, and that's the NPC meme. Yeah, where it's like it's the NPC versus like the male chat or whatever.
Yeah, but this is a digression, but there can be something healthy about a little bit of ridicule when somebody's
like telling them the truth.
Telling them the truth in a way that kind of is. Yeah. Sometimes humor is more hurtful than just saying the truth. Sometimes it softens the blow. So, exactly. But the point is with the I was making with the incel type guys, and I called them, they're voluntarily celibate. Yeah. But part of it, the way they're like that is they don't have the perspective, like they can't even raise the possibility to themselves, like, if I were a woman, I wouldn't like somebody who looks like me. Now here's the but at the same time they're like kind of ogling these, and I alluded to this at the end of the essay. Yeah. They're, ogling these OnlyFans type women is like, that's the object of their fantasy. And it doesn't occur to them that, that kind of girl probably isn't interested in, and you could go down the list to just, for brevity, just how they look, but like how they behave and like their jobs and their personalities and all those other things that are wrong with them.
They're not offering much.
But just looking at yourself in the mirror is this is why it's comical. It's such an easy thing to do that that people don't do. And it's like there's no rule that says you have to be like in really good shape or something. Like, it's just that people who are fit and healthy tend to partner with people, with fit and healthy people. And there's a kind of one of the, as we were talking before, empirical findings of the psychology of sex dating is this called the assortive mating, and that it's people tend to partner with people who are like them along a number of dimensions. So maybe you see like the fat guy with the pretty skinny girl. Sometimes that happens. Like, it's not. But you'll find on other dimensions that they're very similar.
Or that too.
Yeah, that do.
I mean, like, there's an old saying. He's got a
compensation.
There's an old saying: "Birds of a feather flock together." Yeah, I think that's true.
That's true. That's true for people's when they have the ability to choose their romantic partner. That's what happens in the long term, is that they sort out into. Yeah. So if you want the OnlyFans looking girl who's doing squats all the time, like. What are the odds that she's gonna be like greasy overweight guys who play video games all day in their mom's basement? Like, some of them might actually like that, but
it's pretty rare.
Pretty rare, yeah.
All right. Any last thoughts on your article before we wrap or before we finish up?
Not really.
Okay. You said everything you wanted to say?
Yeah, I mean, I said everything I wanted to say. I encourage anybody who's deep down this red pill rabbit hole to reconsider and to take seriously the fact that most men who have success with women do not think this way, do not read this garbage, and yet are doing way better than you. So maybe they know something, and maybe these people who preach the red pill don't know what they're talking about.